All right, well, good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue. Welcome online and in person to Concordia University's Fourth Space. So glad you could join us for Research That Matters, Sustainability, Biodiversity, and Justice in a Time of Ecological Crisis, Day 2. So this morning's session, Biodiversity, Conservation, and Reintroduction, will be a presentation and workshop focused on Dr. Renata Ferreira's research on the Capuchin monkeys in Brazil. But it will also involve some participation in the framework of a brainstorm finding solutions to real-world biodiversity and conservation problems. So to help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube Live, which is located on, we are streaming to YouTube Live from Concordia University's Fourth Space, which is located on unceded indigenous lands here in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. Nous reconnaissons la nation Kanien'kehá:ka comme gardienne des terres et des eaux sur lesquelles nous nous réunissons aujourd'hui. And we make this acknowledgement to bring awareness and understanding of the history of Indigenous peoples and their territories that we occupy. If you are new to Fourth Space in person or online, then once again, welcome in. We work with our university community here to mobilize and exchange knowledge by co-creating daily activities, moments of exchange such as today's conversation and presentation. So it's our pleasure to welcome in our speaker and of course all of you audience members. There will be room, as I said, for engagement, questions and comments. So if you're online, feel free to raise a virtual hand. We'll call on you so you can jump in, or the chat is activated, of course. And if you're joining us in person, thanks for braving this gorgeous weather we're having. Also raise a hand and we'll make sure to get a mic to you so that the folks on Zoom can hear you. That's it for me. I'll be passing it over to Sarah Turner now for some words of welcome. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, and here we go. So welcome, everybody. I'm Sarah Turner. I'm the co-director of the Loyola Sustainability Research Center, along with Jim Grant. And I'm really pleased to welcome you to the second day of our Research That Matters, Sustainability, Biodiversity, and Justice in a Time of Crisis conference. Rebecca Titler is in the back there, our brave coordinator and organizer. And Anthony, and I don't know your last name, thank you so much for all the work you've done. What? Dalola? Thank you, Anthony. He's been back scenes organizing along with Rebecca in a truly heroic manner to get this conference together, which has been, you know, a lot of moving parts and a lot of moving pieces. So really grateful for their work, and really grateful to the folks at Fourth Space for hosting, because our ability to do these hybrid kind of really cool meetings where things actually work and the tech functions is really all about Fourth Space. So thank you, Doug and Anna and all of the Fourth Space team. We really appreciate you. I'm a professor in the Department of Geography, Planning and Environment, and sort of here with two hats, because I'm also the happy collaborator with Renata Ferreira, who's going to be doing our workshop today. I just wanted to say a couple things about some of the upcoming events before we get going. So this afternoon, we're having a panel discussion on West Coast rainforest activist movements from the West Coast of Canada. And it's, I'm really excited about this panel. It's a wonderful mixture of activists and scientists, and Indigenous elder Bill Jones is going to be there, Indigenous activist Rainbow Eyes from the Rainforest Flying Squad. I really encourage you to come. I think we're going to have a wonderful discussion about the integrated challenges and issues associated with rainforest conservation on the West Coast. Rasim Khalifa will be giving one of the keynote addresses for this conference, and this is on Wednesday, 4 to 5 in the Fourth Space. Again, I really encourage you to come. I think this is going to be a fabulous talk towards a more internationally equitable science. Rasim has done a lot of really important work on making science more accessible and on EDI and science, and this is a really important topic and a good speaker, and I encourage you to come. I also wanted to say that this conference is has sustainable event certification, So one of the things, if you're on Zoom, we ask that you turn off your camera and your mic during the time when someone else is presenting, just to reduce the footprint, and it also makes the meeting run more smoothly. And then please do feel free to turn on the camera and the mic at times when we're involved in discussion. So we don't want to discourage your participation. We just want to reduce the footprint of the meeting as much as possible. Lastly, there's really a lot of different parts of the university and organizations that have been involved in sponsoring this conference, and we really appreciate them. So in particular, for Renata's talk today, I'd like to thank Pascal Sicot, Dean Sicot, and the Dean's Office from Faculty of Arts and Sciences, and Damon Matthews and the Leads Create program from NSERC, and also Leela Sujer and the Elastic Spaces Thinking Aloud team, who've all sponsored this particular event as part of this conference. And the conference as a whole has received funding and support from the university, from many of the departments in the university, from the Sustainability Action Fund, and we are grateful. So today now, this is our workshop, and Renata has asked me to just provide a little bit of background and introduction. So I'm going to do that, and so is Michaela, our PhD student. She's going to talk for a few minutes too, and then we'll hand it over to Renata. So rehabilitation and reintroduction of wildlife are part of the whole picture of biodiversity and restoration. And you'll recall that in December, the COP15 UN Biodiversity Conference took place in Montreal. And there was historically an agreement reached that actually spans a lot of really important points in terms of biodiversity conservation. And notably, restoration and restore and restoration concepts are embedded throughout this agreement. So these are just a few examples, but goal A includes the integrity, connectivity, resilience of all ecosystems, maintained, enhanced, or restored sustainably, increasing the area of natural ecosystems by 2050. Also, goal B includes biodiversity is sustainably used and managed, and nature's contributions to people, including ecosystem functions and services, are valued, maintained, and enhanced, with those currently in decline being restored by 2050. And all of this with the target of a 30%. So to ensure that by 2030, at least 30% of areas of degraded terrestrial inland water and coastal and marine ecosystems are under effective restoration in order to enhance biodiversity and ecosystem functions and services, ecological integrity and connectivity. So all of that feeds into that the UN has declared this decade to be the decade of ecosystem restoration. And animals and mammals are an important part of any ecosystem. And yet we see a lot throughout the world, we see a lot of forests and other habitat landscapes where larger mammals are disappearing from those landscapes, where you have kind of empty forests or landscapes without large mammalian species present. So restoring animal populations to these forests and landscapes that have sometimes, been emptied is critical for restoring ecosystems. They play all sorts of really key functions in the ecosystems, and just in terms of having and maintaining biodiversity and the integrity of the natural world, this is really key. So this brings in the kind of rescue, rehab, and reintroduction theme. When we talk about rescue, it refers to the removal of individuals from situations of injury or human-related danger. So that's, this is animals that have been taken in the pet trade or maybe have been injured on roads. There's a lot of ways that animals can end up at a rescue center. But when we're talking about wildlife, and especially when we're talking about Capuchin monkeys, it's often because of the pet trade, as Renata will describe. And then often there's a rehabilitation process. So this is a managed process in which ill, injured, orphaned, or displaced wild animals regain the health and skills they need for successful reintroduction and survival in the wild. And those are a couple of scarlet macaws from a rescue center in Panama. And then reintroduction refers to the release of the captive or confiscated individuals or groups of animals into wild habitats. And this can include translocations, introductions of animals outside their historic range sometimes, or the release of animals to where there's already they are already present to supplement the numbers of an existing population. And of course, we have to take into account a lot of different factors when we plan these reintroductions so that we're not harming the current ecosystems, but we're actually enhancing them. And there's a lot of examples around the world of successful reintroductions. So here are just a few of the most famous ones. You've probably heard of the wolves in Yellowstone National Park. I think they're maybe the most famous example, and maybe the most controversial example of wildlife reintroduction. So, from just 14 individuals who were brought from Canada, wolves had been extirpated from that area, and they brought 14 individuals down from Canada. And now there's a thriving population of wolves in Yellowstone with more than 100 individuals in multiple packs. And they keep the elk population in check, which in turn, and moving and sort of on the move through the landscape, which in turn has allowed the beavers to come back and change the water flows of the area. And the whole ecosystem has changed and has benefited greatly from wolf reintroduction. There's also this example of bison in the Netherlands and Romania. So the Dutch and Romanian bison reintroduction program has been considered a success quite recently, with ecosystem benefits of bison grazing on lands that have been savanna lands, and increasing the biodiversity and the ecosystem resilience through having these large grazers come back into the ecosystem. And a recent success story has been the inclusion of the beaver in Britain, with late 2017 reintroductions in the Forest of Dean. And the beavers have been actually helping with flood control mitigation through their damming and return to that ecosystem. And then the Galapagos tortoises, which were almost driven to extinction, but partly from invasive species and human use, and are now about 1,500 strong, which is still a very small population, but is much larger than the 14 remaining individuals that were left when they started the rehab and reintroduction process. So there's also, of course, times when it doesn't work out, and there's still really, this science is in its infancy in a lot of ways. Reintroduction, we're really just beginning to scratch the tip of the iceberg about what we need to know about animal personality and ecosystem coherence. And so that's what makes Renata's work really so important and so timely. It fits within this whole scheme of restoration of ecosystems. So I would like to pass the mic over to Michaela, Renata and my PhD student, who's working on this issue, and she's got a short presentation on the role of primate reintroduction in restoring degraded ecosystems.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Renata. And thank you everyone for being here this morning. So amidst increasing global biodiversity loss, it's important to recognize the interconnectedness of ecosystems and the cascading effects of species decline. Non-human primates are theorized to have co-evolved with flowering plants in a mutualistic relationship, plants providing fruit to sustain the primates who act as their dispersers and pollinators. Primates play important roles in their native ecosystems and are often considered to be critical seed dispersers. Often considered to be critical seed dispersers for vegetation regeneration. Primates that consume insects may also act as pseudoprotectors of the plants that those insects feed on. In degraded ecosystems, where primates have become locally extinct, the loss of seed dispersers can cause a cascading effect, negatively impacting countless species of plants and animals within the ecosystem. In these cases, one potential strategy to tackle ecosystem restoration is through the reintroduction of formerly captive primates. The rehabilitation and reintroduction process offers a second chance at life for those captive individuals and can have further-ranging benefits for population numbers and the ecosystem of the release site. For example, where I lived for 2 years in the Madre de Dios region of the Peruvian Amazon, I worked with Terracaya Eco Reserve to reintroduce rescued black-faced black spider monkeys, like Thunder here, you can see up in my slide, in an area of the jungle where their populations had previously thrived, but were driven to local extinction by habitat fragmentation, illegal hunting, and other anthropogenic activities. These individuals were most often confiscated from a life of captivity as pets by government authorities, or were orphaned due to poaching and brought to Terekaya for rehabilitation. Studies in the area of reintroduction have shown that the spider monkeys are critical for maintaining forest structure and diversity through their seed dispersal. Through the process of medical and social rehabilitation, there have now been 3 groups of successfully released spider monkeys that are living freely and reproducing a second generation of wild monkeys. This is one of many promising examples of how reintroduction can successfully create a new generation of monkeys reintegrated into an ecosystem that relies on them. Even so, there are also many examples of unsuccessful reintroductions, where individuals fail to adapt or even cause harm to local populations or ecosystems. It's vital that any reintroduction efforts aim to follow the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's guidelines for primate reintroductions in order to ethically and sustainably use established best practices and to reduce the risk of harm. These guidelines include factors such as quarantine and disease screening recommendations, legal and financial requirements, and post-release monitoring best practices. I argue that in following these guidelines, primate reintroduction should be increasingly considered as a tactic in the restoration of degraded ecosystems in which primates are or were formerly present. Thank you.
Thanks, Michaela. And so that's a really nice summary. I would like to now introduce Renata. So it's really nice to see you here on this side of the Fourth Space camera. Renata's a collaborator in the Leads Create program and has been to a number of events in Fourth Space, but from Brazil and on the other side of the screen. Renata is an associate professor in the Department of Physiology and Behavior at Rio Grande do Norte Federal University in Natal, Brazil. And she is a highly respected primatologist and behavioral ecologist whose work straddles sustainability and conservation sciences. Renata holds a PhD from Cambridge University, and she has an active cross-disciplinary research program that includes animal personality, habitat use, movement ecology, and includes humans and human social environment dynamics in her examination of these behavioral ecology and conservation questions in Capuchin monkeys. So yeah, I'm really very pleased to have you here, and thank you so much for coming all the way from Brazil and for preparing this presentation. I'll hand it over to you.
I have this one here. Okay. Hi all. If I don't look in that direction, it's because I'm not used to see myself here, okay? So I would like to share my screen. Okay, share screen. This one. Yeah. So I would like to start. Thanks, Sarah, very much, and for bringing me here, and all the students that applied for the grant to bring me here. So thank you. It's very nice. It's a really different atmosphere that we can feel and see all the posters and all the movement that is taking place. So it's nice to feel the atmosphere of this young country and young people here. So thank you very much. Okay. So let me start presenting where I am. So here I am in Natal. Can you see? Yeah, you can see that. So I'm come from here, from Federal University, and I work mostly, I run with Capuchin monkeys, where I run the Laboratory of Studies on Coexistence. And the goal is actually to manage the coexistence between primates and humans. So we develop a lot of studies with different lines of research, and the studies I'm going to present here, the results are mainly conducted by my students, to which I would like to thank beforehand. And we also keep an Instagram page. Please follow us. You'll see that's important. So follow us, which is mainly devoted for combating primate traffic, and particularly Capuchin monkeys traffic. So this talk is actually part of a workshop series, which is going to be 3 meetings we're having all Tuesdays. So the first one is this, from defaunation to refaunation. So we're going to present some examples of 11 campaigns we conducted to reintroduce rescued Capuchin monkeys. And then we're going to have another 2 meetings in which I will detail a little bit more what the Capuchin monkeys really are, what are their inter and interspecific variability and behavioral skill, the difference between behavioral skill and behavioral traits. And we're going to have a little bit of stats towards the end, a practice of it. And in the last Tuesday, we are going to talk a little bit more about social ecological models, landscape of fear, and again, a little bit of stats. So you are all welcome. So in this one, I'll talk a little bit more about the inner part of the Capuchins, and here a little bit more about the ecological part. And we are going to, as it's just 2 hours, it's just a prime on the statistics, okay? It's just for you to have an idea. So in this talk, I'm going to give a little feedback on what Sarah already presented from other animals, which is the 3 R's, rescue, rehab, and rewild, fighting back biodiversity loss. Talk a little bit about the types of translocation, present the Capuchin monkeys, and this is the bulk of the presentation, what we do, Operação Sapajos, and how we try to follow the IUCN guidelines that Michela just talked about. And we are going to talk a little bit about the challenge, which is the restoration paradigm. And if we have the time, and I bought something to brainstorm for us to discuss here live and online too. So biodiversity loss is so great that in our days that we have been called the Anthropocene era, okay? And we are facing the 6th mass extinction. This mass extinction is taking place in all biomes and in all areas, terrestrial, marine, and river, freshwater, mainly caused by habitat modification and direct exploration, but also with an increasing force of climate change on this. However, the animals, they are not equally susceptible to extinction. Some of them are more under threat, and those that have lower fecundity, larger home range size, they are daily, they are active during the day, in the higher trophic level, they have large brain size, large body size, small population size, they are more under threat, which is called, we are facing now what is actually called the dwarfism of biodiversity, because only the really small animals like squirrels are being able to thrive in this moment. And primates, they actually fit most of this definition, and over half of the primate population all around the globe in all continents, they are under threat, mainly again for the same reasons: habitat loss, disruption of population structure, population decrease, okay? So it's the same thing, and the threats are, one of them is large-scale agriculture, and hunting and trade are also a major threat. It's listed here as the second one. So while primates are disappearing from wild, they are increasing in using anthropic land covers. So here we have this famous primates along with dogs on the streets. And about 30% of all primate species, they are found in one or another type of anthropic landscape, okay? And all of them, there is no phylogenetical signals. That is primate, they are just going to the cities. Also, they are being found in increasing numbers, and animals are being found in increasing number in rescue centers. So this is one example of a study in 6 years in New South Wales. So in only this area here in Australia, over 6 years, about 500,000 animals were rescued. So this is what we call biodiversity loss. Okay, so just in this area. So you can, if you extrapolate this from the whole world, you have millions, billions of animals just being rescued there. Okay, this is another example. In one veterinary hospital in Central Ohio, over 10 years, we have 45,000 individuals of 208 different species. And these rescue centers, they're wildlife. They are not dogs and cats, okay? These are real wildlife. So we have a huge number of animals kept in rescue centers that we have to take care of. And this, I'm not talking about the small rescue centers. So for example, and this rescue center in Hawaii, which operates with a staff of 5 human beings, they have rescued already 3,520 animals. And this is a great opportunity for us to work and to help, okay? Here, I searched a little bit about the rescue centers in Canada. I did not want to put one on another to make the advertisement, but we do have here. I enter here in Quebec. I only saw 2 in Quebec, actually. I only saw 2 rescue centers in Quebec, and I could not find their numbers, but maybe I had to search more. But we do have tons of smaller rescue centers, which add to this huge number of animals that have been taken from the wild. And what shall we do to them? And that's our responsibility, okay? So as Sarah already talked, the United Nations declared this the decade of ecosystem restoration. So while acknowledging the important job and work conducted by the conservation biology in mapping the areas that are still pristine, that must be conserved, we need to restore. So we already have a Society for Ecological Restoration. We need to restore. It's not enough to conserve anymore. We have to restore it, okay? So translocation of animals or reintroduction of animals is not new, although it's much more rarer than reforestation. So one thing is reforest, another thing is to refaunation. So the United Union for Conservation of Nature has a specialist group that used to be called reintroduction, specialist group, and now it's renamed by translocation specialist groups that accompany the students that happens on reintroduction of animals. But as you can see here, they are really few. 2008, 62 cases. Can I just, lazy, that's easier, huh? Okay, so 62 case studies. In 2010, 72 case studies. 50 cases, 52 cases, 54, 59, 69. So as you can see, refaunation is something rare, okay? It's difficult to be conducted. It requires a multidisciplinary group, a lot of legal authorizations, a lot of individuals involved, and that's why the IUCN themselves defines translocation as for a vision of the world where courageous actions repairs nature's past damage and secures against the threats of future. So it's you have to be brave to do that, because there is, of course, it's a science on its beginning. There is a lot of threats. We talk about this threat here. So that's why they themselves call these courageous actions. One important thing to be aware is that rewild is not the return of an ecosystem to a pre-human, pre-Columbian state, okay? It is restoring wilderness as a future-oriented visions, okay? So we are not trying to bring nature to where it was, exactly where it was, but to save the biodiversity, to save life the way we can, okay? So it's future-oriented, and that's why maybe they call it brave, they call it courageous, and that's why maybe we face so much difficult people that are still, oh, let's not touch the wilderness, okay? We know that loss of biodiversity has cascading effect, and we have 4 different types of translocation or reintroduction. Huh? So we have translocation for species conservation and translocation to restore natural ecosystem function. So here are some examples. So for example, when you put some animals, a species in an area, there is still species occurring, but in fewer numbers, we call it reinforcement. In the area where it was previously found, but there is no longer any animal of that species there. It's called a reintroduction. It's also called a reintroduction when you put, but to improve the ecosystem function, okay? Not with the goal to protect the species itself, but as Michaela said, for example, the role that the animal plays in the ecosystem as a whole, even if the species itself is not endangered. Okay? And we also have introduction of species where they never happen. So for example, we can do an example of Tasmanian devil, assisted colonization. So it was put it in an area that it have never happened, but it's suitable for it. And also we can have ecological replacement. So this is a really nice example where this turtle, it replaced the role of a duck. There was not the duck anymore, but the turtle can do the job. So that's what we call that it's not past oriented, it's future oriented. Okay, so that's one of the paradigms we have to change. Reintroduction and rewild of primates is seen by the International Primatological Society as something important. So where primate species are locally exploited, reintroductions may be a feasible conservation strategy, okay? And the use of wild-born, rescued, and rehabilitated primates instead of captive-bred animals in reintroduction program reduces the cost and increases success, okay? This is a challenge because many of the species we still have, they are actually bred in zoos. So actually we have the first generation, second generation of animals that were born in zoos, and these animals that are born in zoos, they have less success than rescued animals. Even if these rescued animals, they are raised in human settings, they do have more chance to survive than those kept in zoos. And by doing this, we can learn how and learn techniques to improve the survivorship of those that are bred in zoos, okay? So with all this scenario in mind, when I started, okay, let's start the career. So I started this project in my university, Capuchin monkeys, phenotypic plasticity and resilience in disturbed habitats. And I have two focus of areas. One is an Atlantic forest fragment that is bordered by two big cities. Here, one city, here is another city. Jack has been there, he studied there. So the capuchins are just being crocheted between these two cities. Everything's growing, but I'm not going to talk today about this. I've talked in another talk online. Today, I'm going to talk about the study we conduct in the rescue center. So there are animals that are being officially rescued by federal agencies, environmental agencies. So who are the Capuchin monkeys? Capuchin monkeys, there, how they look like. Okay, these two species are endangered. Okay, they are split in sapajos, which is the robust capuchins, and cebus, the gracile capuchins. Here, robust because they have this. They are used to durophagic diet. Okay, so the muscles fix into this sagittal crest. And the gracile, they eat more fruits. The robust occupy most of South America, and the gracile is more Central America. They weigh between 2.5 and 3.5 kilos. And I would like to put this in perspective because the cat of my colleague has 8 kilos. Okay, so just to put you in perspective, so although they seem big, say they are 50 to 65 centimeters, they're most fur and they're light actually. Okay, so just to put in perspective the weight. They have omnivorous durophagic diet. They are robust, okay? They eat nuts. They eat hard stuff, okay? They live live up to 35 years in the wild. In captivity, they've been found to live until 47. In groups of 16, 60, but in the group in fragments, as those that Jack studied, we have 134 animals living in a fragment. They live in matrilineal tolerant societies. That's why, so this type of they live in, one looking to the food of the other is very common. Okay, and we have an index of hierarchy, and they always, that goes from 0 to 1. 0 is totally egalitarian, and 1 is totally despotic. And they tend to have Appleby index of less than 5. So it's characterized as a really tolerant species. They're excellent models for the evolutionary anthropology and psychobiology. That's why I'm psychobiology, and I study them. One of the main things is that they manufacture, transport, and use tools. And tools, we say stones to crack open nuts. And here you can see the tolerance and the learning part of it. Okay, here you can see they transporting nuts. Oh, I found a nut. They transport and they take it to the right place. So it indicates future planning. And here they use different types of tools. Stones, sticks, always in proximity. They are tolerant, which facilitates teaching and learning from others, social learning. They have large neocortical ratio, so whenever you study them, they're always there, up. They're always up, okay? So they're fantastic for theories of enlarged neocortex. That's why we, in that study psychobiology or evolutionary anthropology, we have them as models for society and for evolution of brain. So here we have, they're also models for social learning and evolution, and here on extent of prosociality. So when we think about helping others, they are also good models for a species. So here we have chimpanzees. They're not really helpful individuals. They're not really helpful species. Here are the Homo sapiens, and here are the Capuchins. Okay, I don't know if it's not going to work here. I would like to, maybe I can present towards the end. Who are these guys? A little video on inequality aversion. I don't know. Let me see. If I change the pointer, does it? No. Okay, we can check. We can present it towards the end. Okay, yeah. These videos. Okay. So these are the guys that we receive. They are tolerant. They are nice. They are pro-social, and yet they are kept as pets, and we rescue them. Okay. So these are how they receive them. Some of them are in bad condition. These are blind. They are injured. And they can stay longer times, you see that, and we try to rehab them, to offer them a better chance, and to try to make science of reintroduction. So let's talk about trade and traffic and keeping in captivity. So there is legal international trade, okay? And Capuchins, they are listed in CITES, which are the species that can be traded in the United States, okay? So here we have the number of animals that has been legally traded. Here, W is wild, C is captivity. So you see that most animals that are legally traded, they actually come from wild. The problem is that by coming from wild, it feeds a lot of illegal trade and traffic. That's the point. So it's always accompanied by that. Most of these animals, they actually go by zoos, the endangered species. And the non-endangered species, most of this trade is for research. Okay, so we take animals from wild and we take them to zoos or labs, okay, and keep them. So this is the legal part. However, there is a traditional maintenance of it that is kept, so mainly caused by lack of area. This is a Capuchin female with an infant in the back. I don't know if you can see, an infant in the back. Stealing a bread from a house. And here's the traditional pet keeping trade there. So this is the numbers of animals that are received in rescue centers in Brazil. So after this study was conducted in 2000 until 2006. So we are updating these numbers. Back then, we received 50 primates per month in the whole Brazil, which means 600 primates per year in rescue centers. So only primates in rescue center, and 72 animals per year in the rescue center, 72,000 animals per year in rescue centers, okay? Most of them coming from Amazonia and Atlantic forests, and most of them are not endangered species. 27%, 1/3 of them, they go to places that are exotic to the destination area. Combating wildlife traffic is hard, okay? So primate conservation in South America, the human and ecological dimension of the problems. This is a tough study to read that. So this primatologist, Alejandro Sada, they related this amount of traffic to low income. So if you see here in South America and Mesoamerica, about 35% of the population live with less than $2 per day, okay? And in one of the top 25 countries, which includes Canada, no population live with less than $2 per day. Maybe $3, I think some people want to say, but not $2. So in a scenario like that, it's hard to combat wildlife traffic, okay? So for example, a legal Capuchin monkeys that you can achieve and take it to the United States, it costs about 15,000 Canadian dollars. But if you go in the traffic, you can buy it for $500. And you buy, so it's hard. And for $500 for these guys that receive less than $2 per day, that's a good deal, right? So the risk, it's really hard to combat that. They go to all rescue centers spread in Brazil, and there is a duty of the rescue center, which is, here is release soltura, release must be prioritized. So these animals, those that are rescued, they have to be released. And of course, it's hard for them receiving 72,000 animals per year to follow all the IUCN guidelines, to make everything so properly. It's hard for them. Most of them are not conducted properly. So that's why when we started in 2008, when I enrolled the psychobiology post-graduation program, to make this partnership to try to help, and that's what I'm going to present to you now. So the first thing we're trying to do, and that's why please follow us, is to combat the demand. Okay, it doesn't matter if we release, if the demand continues. So we have an Instagram, which is run by Victoria Nunes, and to combat these type of things, okay? These type of things in Instagram, this guy has millions of followers, okay? You know, so the goal is to say that basically this is ugly. Don't do that. So we tried, our first action is let's stop the removal of the animals. So if you go here, you help us to have more followers and maybe help us to combat it better. Here's an update of the numbers. So here we have the only in Northeastern Brazil, this is a study that Thalita conducted. We reviewed the data of entering the rescue centers only in Northeastern area, and the numbers actually increased. Remember, it was 600 primates per year. Now, by our projection, we have 1,272 primates per year rescued in Brazil, in all rescue centers, okay? By extrapolating by these ones. Most of them are native species, but we also have exotic species. And these animals can stay years in the rescue center, okay? This is in days, so animals that have no destination, they stay at least 1 year. This is the median is, but they can stay years in rescue center, okay, without proper destination. This is only primates we're talking about. Those with destination, they stay a little bit less, but can take up to 4 or 5 years for them to be released. Endangered species, they're easier to be designated because normally zoos and sanctuaries, they do take them, but non-endangered species, those are harder to find. They stay super long in rescue centers. So as I said, our goal is to help these guys, okay, to make the release following the IUCN guidelines. So IUCN guidelines, they propose 6 steps: arrival, assessment, rehabilitation, pre-release assessment, the release itself, and the post-release. So we try to help them in all of this, and that's what I'm going to show you now. So in the arrival, quarantine, medical assessments, and vaccines. So this is what we do. We get them, and we try to do, for example, studies of hematology, physiology, morphometry, parasitological studies. So we do the all screen of these animals, including hormones, okay, stress hormones. Actually, those that are conducted in rescue centers, they are the easier part to be conducted, because rescue centers is in the city center, so it's easier to take students to the city center and conduct this type of study. One of the greatest fear in reintroduction is that we are going to cause an epidemiological Armageddon. Okay, we are going to release there, and the disease will be spread. Although we know that most of this COVID, H1N1, and all these things, they're mostly by productive meat, and for product chicken, that is for meat, and cows, that is for meat, because these animals, they're bombarded with antibiotics, and so they have this super bacteria as a consequence of that. So although most of this ecological Armageddon is going to be probably caused by meat consumed by us, there is a fear that we cause an epidemiological Armageddon. So we try to make partnerships with federal labs in order to screen all the animals officially. What are the challenges? There are actually no zoonosis taking place. They are not sick. We are doing it preventively. So there's no budget priority for that. Okay, so the budget priority is when some things happen, such as yellow fever or Zika. So the money goes when a zoonosis is really taking place, not as, oh no, this is just preventive. So it's hard, and we have to convince them we're in this work for that. But we do. It's not still regular, but it's taking place. Another challenge is the transport of samples. Normally they have to be transported in liquid nitrogen, because it's conducted by PCR with genes, and it has to be taken in 2 days. So it's a nightmare to do that, but we're making it. Okay. But that's the first challenge and the first criticism that we face that's why they call it, you are going to cause an epidemiological Armageddon, and you must say that I have nightmares about that. Another part is the assessment, okay, the part of where are they, they're wild, expect, often orphans, how are their behavior, and the rehabilitation of it. The criticism we receive is that these imprinted individuals, they are unable to recover. Okay, so they won't learn, they will die. That's not possible to reintroduce them because they are not raised properly. Okay, so I would say towards the end that this is a vision of behavior that is outdated. Okay, so Konrad Lorenz, when he coined the imprinting concept, it was in 1920. We are 100 years after this, so we have moved from fixed action patterns to plasticity. So the science of animal behavior have already evolved, but we need to rehabilitate them nevertheless. Okay, so that's what most of our students conduct. That's what I said is the easiest part is in the city center. That's where Michaela and Caroline are going there. That's how it looks like. And we suggest that primate environments, that's in this perspective continuum from wild to captivity. Okay, so rather than viewing wild behavior as natural and captive behavior as artificial, we have to see them as a continuum, and the behavior observed is a flexible response. So that's the idea. We are now thinking of animals, they are much more flexible than what was thought 100 years ago. So this is the main book of my research. We look for evolution of stress coping strategies. So we see evolution of bulimia. Here is evolution of self-injury, pacing, and here's head thrill. Okay, so here this, when I'm stressed, I pace. I don't have thrill, I don't have bulimia. So, but we can see the evolution. So there are models to see the evolution of how we ourselves deal with stress, because we in fact may be considered partly captivity. Okay, we are not ranging, we are not free ranging. Huh? We live most of our life in captivity. Thanks God we have computer to have environmental enrichment, but still we develop all this type of things. So here just to show you a few of the examples. So when we try to this is the research we can do. This is the, okay, so we see restless, which the anxiety, similar to anxiety behavior, anxiety-like behavior, self-narcotizing, okay, self-protection, which is this self-protection is the depressive. So we have here the anxiety and depressive behavior, stereotyped. So we have a lot of tics, huh? And so this is the type of study we conduct that. We also study personality, okay, and how the axis of personality are related to the axis of stress coping strategies. So we have, for example, feeding behavior, so food-related behavior, sociability, neophilia or neophobic, and activity axis, and how they relate to this self-directed restless. So how each personality reacts when under stress. And here we have the axis of sociability as a protector of stress. This is cortisol that we take from fecal samples. And the studies, I tried to put the students there, the picture of the students that conduct this. Okay, so we see here sociability. Having friends is good, basically, even for Capuchin monkeys. So having friends is good as a buffer to stress. Okay, so here, but we have minimum pace of life as we see the levels of hormones. Not, if you want to see more of that, I invite you for next Tuesday. I'll get into more details into personality and stress coping in Capuchins. Okay, I'm not going to do a lot of it here. Here again, those individuals that are more sociable, they suffer less when you have to change them, routine management, and those individuals that are more social, less sociable, they suffer more. Okay, so when you have to take them, so personality traits modulating a stress response. This is a study I like, because as sociability is so important, forming groups in captivity, and also in captivity, for them to be fine in captivity and also to release them, is super important. So here we have the axis of personality: assertivity, openness, agreeableness, confidence, and neuroticism. And we see here that individuals, when they are put in the group, they have different strategies. Individuals that are assertive, they do not offer a lot of grooming. They restrain, and they are involved in a lot of aggression. Those individuals that are agreeable, they do offer a lot of grooming. And those individuals that are neophilic, openness, abertura, neophilics, they do not groom, but they play. So individuals have different strategies to be accepted in the group. Okay, so one of them, they are accepted in the group by just being aggressive. Other grooms, others, they play. And we have to pay attention to all of this to know how to fit them in the proper group. And this is a fantastic result I find. This is reciprocal social relationship. So you give grooming, I receive groom. I play with you, you play with me. And we try to see the similarity in age, for example, rank, assertiveness, openness, agreeableness, confidence, and neuroticism. And we see that neither axis predicts a reciprocal relationship in isolation. But when we see the Euclidean distance, which is the similarity in all of the axes, it does predict reciprocity. So that's why it's so hard to find a match, okay? Because it doesn't matter just you are matching one of your personality trait. You have to match all of them for it to work. So when you go to Tinder, please put a lot of description of yourself and look for descriptions of others, so that would increase your chance to have a reciprocal relationship, at least if Capuchin monkeys are good models to know. So when we form the group for them to be released, we try to match all of this, okay, all of these personality traits. He had an important part of the preparation for the release of animals. This is a work by Italo that was awarded the second prize in the last meeting in Brazil. What he saw is that individuals that were able to pass for 4 trials of crack nuts, only 4 trials, and they were successful. So rehab has to be that difficult. Only 4 trials were enough for them to learn how to crack. So this is a manipulative, okay, cracking, which is important for these animals because, as we saw, manipulation is a very important trait of them in nature. So they don't really have that when they are rescued. They are in small cages, and then we have to train them, especially in crack nuts, but also in searching for insects. So we have to allow them to search and to practice that. Okay, so this is most of the studies we conduct in captivity. During the assessment, and it's the part of the genetics. Okay, so another criticism we receive is that we are going to cause a genetic Armageddon. Okay, so we are going to mix everything, and something like this, a mix of white horse and zebra, I don't know what that's, we will cause this to happen. One important thing about Capuchin monkeys is that they are natural hybrids. So this is a study, has just been released by Martins. Here you see each color, this is a genetic cluster, okay? And here we have Atlantic forest, Cerrado, which is a savanna-like environment, Amazonia, Cerrado, savanna-like, Caatinga, which is even drier savanna, and northern Atlantic forest. So what you see here is that of all individuals, they are not pure. In all of this area, they're mixed, they're hybrid, they're natural hybrid, which makes sense because it's a tolerant species, okay? And they also have I did not show here, next Tuesday, they are called the sexual acrobats. So they're also highly open in this regard. So it makes sense. So they're natural hybrids. So the color variation is like that. So if you see in this work, it says that instead, these 5 morphological types together form a single widespread clade. It's hard to disentangle them. So this is easier for Capuchin monkeys. Actually, where I work, I am in this area here, which is where in the Caatinga, okay? We have a beautiful clade here from Flavius to libidinosus, so blonde Capuchin monkeys here, brown Capuchin monkeys here, and here is the area where we release them. They are a mix of these 2 clades. But this is not true for all primate species, okay? So this is, for example, an example with howler monkeys, which has a different type of genetics. They can even have different chromosome numbers. So let's not, what happened with Capuchin monkeys does not necessarily happen with all primates. So we really have to be careful about the genetic Armageddon, when we talk about reintroduction, but not so much so with Capuchin monkeys. Another criticism is that we are going to call an ecosystem Armageddon, okay? And yes, it can happen. This is one of the work we conducted in that they simply, that was when we used to release the monkeys in islands. And they just devoured all turtles in the island. They extincted the turtles in this little island, okay? We had to remove the Capuchin from there. So gladly, the turtles went back, okay? But they're freshwater turtles that would put the eggs there. So it is something that local semi-aquatic turtle. So it's really, they can have impact. And because of this impact, that's when we decided not to release monkeys anymore on islands. Let's release them in continuous areas, so then the impact is diminished. And on the other hand, they can have positive impacts. This is not a study with Capuchin monkeys, this is the howler monkeys, but primate reintroduction promoting recruitment of large seed plants, okay? So they can have positive impact on that, and that's one of the things that takes harder to follow. In the pre-release assessment in the area of the release site, we conduct studies where to release them. So one important thing to be clear is that we are not releasing, or we should not release these animals in areas for conservation. Conservation area is to conserve areas. We have to release these animals in areas that can be restored. It cannot be completely destroyed. So it has to be something in the middle, okay? Something that is not completely pristine, but is not completely destroyed, that the animals won't survive. So we are searching for areas that are mildly impacted and that can be saved. Okay, so this is one of the studies conducted by a student of mine when she was finding, okay, this is a good area to be restored. This is a good area to be restored. This could be a good area. And this is the first product of the collaboration with Sarah. Okay, it's a beautiful one from Jennifer, in which she mapped Capuchin monkeys' habitat suitability. She even put it on Google. Okay, so this is the first. I invite you to see her presentation tomorrow in Loyola. I'm going to attend there. And she mapped the whole Caatinga. Okay, so as you can see here, high suitability in green. Here, so there are few areas. So most of the areas we are trying to release them in this orange area. Okay, so that's where we are trying to release them. So she mapped that based on 2 species of palm plants, and it's a beautiful work. This is where Michaela probably we are going to this area here. Okay, this is I looked at. So this is where so we're gonna bring from here to here. Okay, so and this is where the hybrid zone. This is the Caatinga area. So, release plan, post-release assessment. Animals die. It does not worth the effort and money. It's another criticism we receive. Okay, let's use this money to save conserved areas. So this is one of the type of things. I even heard that we should kill them all and put on Instagram. That would be a didactical strategy. We should, yeah, because it doesn't worth the money because they will die anyways. So we try to monitor them with, this is camera traps. Okay, here they are appearing. One problem we have in post-release monitoring is that, yes, they do come back to the houses. Okay, they do come back to the house. This is come back. This is them. And so before releasing the animals, we have to do extensive work with the local population for them not to feed the animals. Call us immediately. We go there, we kept the monkey again. So they do come back to that, but that's not that often. okay? Here's an analysis of movement and survivorship that was conducted. Here we put radio collars in 9 animals. Each collar is one animal, so we see where they've been. And we monitor the survivorship, not only of these 9, but in our database. And what we found is that females tend to survive more than males, although this difference is not significant. From all the personality axes, so when we study personality, it's not only by curiosity of the evolution of our personality. Of course, it's curious to know, how personality evolved, but also to have an applied, okay, to be applied, either to form groups or to see which personality traits better predict survivorship. So we studied boldness, neophilia, exploration, food-oriented. Food-oriented is normal food, neophilia is new food. Vigilance, activity, sociability, and aggressiveness. And what you find is that only neophilia and activity predicted survivorship. So being bold in captivity, being aggressive in captivity, being social in captivity, it helps you to deal with captivity itself, but it does not help you to survive after. Okay, what predict was neophilia, in which more neophilic individuals survived more, which means when we offered new food in captivity, those that ate new food, they survived more, which makes sense. You are in a new area, you have to eat anything that is there. So if you are okay to eating, when we travel to Middle East and we eat spiders and scorpions, that's okay, it makes you survive better. And interesting, the individuals that are less active. So when you're released in a new area, keep it a low profile, keep it quiet. Don't move a lot and expose yourself to predators or you get lost. Okay, so be quiet and eat anything that is in the environment. That's the success when you move to a new area. Okay, being bold does not help a lot. Being aggressive does not help a lot. Although it tends to, you see bolder tend to survive more. Being less aggressive, because boldness is risky situation, aggressive is sociability, okay? So it does, but it's not significant. So here we have the survivorship analysis of the 11 campaigns I followed since 2009 until 2021. I followed the release of 145 animals, Capuchin monkeys. Okay? There were more released than these. These are the ones I followed. So we could move, for example, from exams, which are only hemogram and parasitological, to a full arbovirus analysis, okay, with genetics. Here's full genetics here. We moved from 4 weeks of rehab to 4 months of rehab, okay? Post-release monitoring is still harder to be conducted. Here we have the survivorship. So out of the 10, 4 survived after 3 months monitored, and 2 animals were I saw them again in 2015. So we released 10 in 2009. In 2015, I could still see 2 of them. In 2019, I could see 2 of them that were released, and in 2000, those are different areas, okay? Different areas. So what we have is in a mean values. Survivorship after 3 months is confirmed survivorship of 50%, and confirmed mortality of 11% after 3 months. After 6 months, confirmed survivorship of 25%, confirmed mortality of 37%. And after 10 years, confirmed survivorship of 7%. Is this a lot? Isn't it not? Is it worth the effort? So here I brought two studies, one with gorilla, in which it make a population viability analysis of reintroduction success, and they put some scenarios of reintroduction. Okay, so reintroducing only 2 females and 3 males, reintroducing 3 females and 3 males. So it's a very small size population relative to what was there. And what they found is that in the baseline, which is the population without reintroduction, they have a 9.2% of going extinct, probability of extinction. And if you put just the minimum, 2 females and 3 males, this probability of extinction decreased by half. Okay, and if you put more, probability of extinction decreases to 0. So even with a small number of individuals, it does help in the long run. Okay, and here also a really nice paper published last year, 2021, population effects of wildlife rehabilitation and release. And it says, as expected, that release and reintroduction is more important for those slow-paced reproduction, slow life history species. So the longer you have of gestation time, longer you have of suckling time, so the longer interbirth interval, those species with large interbirth interval, they are more favored than those with short interbirth interval, which is exactly what primates are. So an overall analysis of all the IUCN, so in this manuscript she reviewed all parts of all steps of IUCN, how many of the studies were followed. I think it was 41 studies, and the percentage of them that followed. So for example, medical assessment, it was only 61% of the reintroduced study that she published, that she found published. Okay, so those with more are acclimatization in release sites. They did, most of them conducted that. The analysis of the release site. Predator awareness training is very few. It's hard to train predator because it requires negative conditioning. So you have to inflict the suffering in the animal in order to train them. So the goal, Sarah, is us to improve this. So I'm coming here, put this picture of us here. We are talking. The goal, Sarah, is that we tick all, okay? That we, in this case, we are in one of those that tick all of this, okay? I would like to talk about 2 things before starting our discussion moment, which are not in the IUCN list. One is this study of demography and practice of Australian caring of native wildlife, psychological, physical, and financial effects. And this is something that is not listened, but we suffer, my students suffer, and be prepared, these 2 girls, which is called compassion fatigue. Okay, so, or depression by compassion. Okay, it's described as a state of exhaustion and dysfunction, biologically, psychologically, and socially, as a result of prolonged exposure to compassion stress and all that it evokes. Okay, so when my mom says, I should be happy, I live by the sea. Right? It's compassion fatigue. Okay, seeing these animals is really different, Jack, than seeing this animal in the wild. I go to the wild, it's nice to see them in the wild. Seeing them in rescue center, it's really tough. We have a higher rate of giving up of my students, and because they say, Renata, I can't stand anymore. I can't stand being there. It's described, it's known. Okay? Another challenge that is not in IUCN are, so this is conservation translocation, common difficulties on, so administrative logics, of course, we don't have money, intrinsic to the species, extrinsic, so lack of environmental areas, extrinsic biological, a lot of predation there. And this extrinsic social political, which is not listed here, but I would add scientific paradigm. A lot of the difficulties we face is a difficulty of colleagues to accept the restoration paradigm. Okay, that to move from conservation biology to restoration biology. Okay, so all this Armageddon criticism we receive, we call it peer pressure in the corridors. It's not official, we do face a lot of it. So the scientific challenge we have for that. When we talk about diseases, we have to be aware that it's not, most of the diseases, the zoonosis, is not primates bringing diseases to humans, but humans bringing disease to primates. Okay, we bring disease to primates. Herpes, yellow fever, they're all humans bringing disease to primates. We have to talk about hybridization and coevolution. This is a beautiful special issue on primate hybridization and hybrid zones. We have to move from this idea of pure species. There is hybrids in nature. We are hybrids. We as humans, we know we are hybrids of all those clades. We evolved because we are hybrids, okay? We also have to speak about behavior flexibility, fast microevolution, plasticity, domestication. Okay, we have to talk about this. And also, definition of protected areas. Who say that small areas do not worth? Who said small population do not worth? Why we have only to have a single large instead of several small? So these are scientific paradigms that here, I think we are in the best environment to think future-oriented, not past-oriented. Have to overcome this, okay? So, to conclude and start our brainstorm, if we have time, I don't know what time is it. I'm not seeing what time is it. If we have time, living with primates has always happened. Yeah, this is a traditional, they hunt adults and they care for infants, free. And when the infants grow, they go back to the forest and adults are hunted. And these you have a sustainable use of primates. Okay, so this happened. This did not cause the extinction of primates. This type of behavior did not cause the extinction of primates. What caused the extinction of primates was loss of forest. That's what caused it. Okay, so this always happened. It's painted in prehistorical paint. We know this is a capuchin because it has the tail like this. Okay, so we leave that. But of course, we moved from this to keeping animals in zoos. So when it already exists since 500 at least, in private reserves to create for the amusement of the governments. So we had zoos for the amusement of governments. We have paintings there. We love Frida Kahlo. Okay. And now we are into this. Yeah. That is the Capuchin monkeys dressed in Brazilian for the World Cup. So we move it from that to this, okay? And of course, it's easier for us to combat this. But what about this? And let's start our discussion topics. This is a native person from Amazonia. It keeps an Instagram devoted to spread their culture. They're valuing their culture. It's an Instagram to develop, enhance, broad spread their culture. It's eating a monkey. Okay, I put the link here in case you want to see. They do that. It's something traditional. They do that. Those, if you see, there are no chains here. Normally, those that are traditional, they don't keep them encaged or in chains. That's the difference, okay? It's one first difference. They don't keep them in chains. That's it. How should we deal with that? That's the first discussion topic. Second discussion topic, kill them all. Kill them all. Compassionate versus consequentialist conservation. The risk is too high. So strategic killing of animals can be justified by an ethics approach that aims to maximize animal welfare outcomes and conservation outcomes. Kill them all. Okay, these 500,000 animals in South Wales, in Australia, just kill them all. Okay, don't be compassionate. Let's think about the major consequence. Another discussion topic. And we can try to build, I don't know how time we have, the ethical matrix. It's a tool for decision making in which we think about the ecological entities, animals and people involved, thinking about the well-being of all of them, autonomy and fairness. Don't know how much time we have, but maybe these two previous one we could discuss a little bit, just a brainstorm, no conclusion needed. Thank you all the partners for making this research possible. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, guys. Thank you. So this is an experiment on fairness and inequality aversion in Capuchin monkeys. So there are two monkeys. They will exchange a rock for a fruit. One will receive cucumber and the other will receive grapes. So that's the experiment.
You will see what happens. So she gives a rock to her, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber. She tests the rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again.
So this is a long video on evolution of morality and inequality aversion, in which Capuchin monkeys are good models, just to have put you an idea what type of animal we are talking about. Back?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, Claudia, all these individuals were kept as pets, and most of them were isolated from other. It's rare that a household has two Capuchins as pets together. It happens, sometimes we rescue both of them, but most of them, they are isolated. And I must say, they resocialize super fast, super fast. There are some that never resocialize, that's true, that's true. Some of them never. Actually, we call them poor assassins, psychopaths, because when they see other Capuchin monkeys, they literally try to kill them. If we let them, they try to kill. But this is a sample of, I followed the release of 145, but I've sampled in captivity over 500. Okay, and this happened, I'm aware of two of them that really could not be resocialized, that really did not integrate it. What we do have is that some individuals that, although they integrated well in social settings, they, after release, they do come back. But maybe because food is easier in the house, not because they're not integrated that. That's why the work with the local population is so important, not giving food to them. But yes, Thank you for your question, Claudia.
So this is more something off the top of my head, but we've noticed a lot of animals have adapted to being around humans and using humans as almost a food source. So would technically the reintegration and adaptation to a new environment that has humans in it, using them as a food source, would that not be adapting to that exact environment?
Yeah, you are talking about a topic that's recent, which is called domestication or natural domestication that's happening. Raccoons, squirrels, many in our cities. So otters. Okay, so animals, they are coexisting with us. And this could happen. And this could happen. It does happen already with capuchins. They have a seasonal use of human settlements. And in many places, the humans already know and are okay with that. Okay, so they use cornfields or cashew fields, bananas. It's seasonal. They come and go. So it already happens. So, but not coming to the house. They stay in the crops there. So that's something that still need to be handled. But this coexistence in urban parks. We have this in Asia and in Africa, parks where you can walk along with long-tail macaques. We have those temple monkeys. So this is also another type of thing that Western science has to deal with. I think it is too much related to this biblical vision that we are sinners and nature has to be apart from us. That is not that strong in Eastern culture, that it allows more proximity. I think we do have, as Western, it's another scientific paradigm, I think, that has to be overcome to allow this proximity more. And thinking that it's not them that are going to cause disease to us, it's very much probably us that are going to pass to them.
Thank you.
Am I good to? Yeah. So as part of my Leeds internship, I've done a lot of research into wildlife trafficking, and one thing I've noticed a lot, especially in like Asia and Africa, is it's very much like run by organized crime, and a lot of the time, like those people you mentioned who are living on less than $2 a day, they're not getting the bulk of that $500 per capuchin. A lot of it is going to like the organized crime that runs it, and those people end up making very little, even when they're, capturing wild animals. Have you found this to be the case in South America, and especially with the capuchins as well?
Hello? Yeah. I don't really have this data myself on traffic, but there is a colleague that is studying the Tríplice frontier, Bolivia, Ecuador, and Brazil there, and exactly what happens. And actually, the traffic of wildlife overall goes along with the traffic of drugs. Okay, so yes, it doesn't stay, the bulk of money does not stay with the person that takes the animal itself from the forest, but those that carries the animal to the buying areas. That's where the money stays. I haven't studied that in our system, but I know this is the case overall. The one that removes receives a little. Sometimes they exchange for a share. Exchange a monkey for a share. Okay, and then the real person that sells receives the $500. That's it.
Thank you.
Hello. So I have yet to go to Brazil. My experience so far is mostly in Peru. Back to the first discussion topic with indigenous people having monkeys as pets. In Peru, having a primate as a pet is illegal, but for indigenous communities, it is completely legal. So while I was living in Peru, I would often see people coming and going from the indigenous communities with howler monkeys, all that sort of thing. But of course you can't report it and it's completely legal. So I'm wondering what the legality is around it in Brazil and what attitudes are towards it in the communities that are living near primate habitat.
It is illegal anywhere, but it's of course it's tolerated in indigenous community. What I found is interesting in that slide I show you is that it has an Instagram to broadcast his culture. And by using the Instagram, it stimulates others in the city to also have that. So should we combat that Instagram? Because it's stimulating others. The same way that I support combating those actors and actors having monkeys, should we also, because it stimulates a bad behavior, should we also combat these indigenous? Now go in there and make a pressure because they're stimulating. That's
So in papers I've read about personality, they indicate that it can be important to study and measure personality traits in different contexts. If you're just measuring them in captivity, do you ever have concerns that they won't show that same, any consistency in those traits once they're in the wild, and that perhaps kind of conclusions that you might be drawing based on what they're showing in captivity might just completely be inconsistent in the wild, if that makes sense?
It's certainly possible. Yes, it is possible. But as our goal in studying this, of course, we want to think about evolution of personality, but in applied, we want to find traits that can predict survivorship. So traits in captivity can be predict trait survivorship after. So it's still worth doing that. But if it will change after, supposedly personality is consistency across time and contexts. So if it is really personality, it should not change much. But then we can discuss if it's personality trait or just a behavioral profile in that moment. That's a nice discussion, but you're right. If it's personality, it should not change.
All right, Sophia, thank you for your question. We're going to read it out here. I was wondering if there are preferred methods currently being used to navigate Native people's traditions and relationship with Native animals, like the examples given for discussion while doing conservation work, or if it's even a common source of conflict during this kind of work.
My experience, I don't really deal with indigenous, okay, or native people. I deal with traditional, poorer communities that are already integrated. But it's not really, what I do is not really native there. And what I know is that by the few examples I see, that was a discussion we had in a meeting that they are trying to avoid making, because there is a community, a group, a tribe in Amazonia that have a festival in which they kill 400 primates every 2 or 3 years as a celebration. Okay, so it's a part of the celebration. They do smoked primates. And everybody there in the meeting was saying, oh, let's stop it, and trying to tell her. And I say, have you ever stopped eating your hamburger before telling them to stop eating the primates? So actually, there is a source of conflict. I don't think, because we don't know how to deal with that, okay? We want them to stop eating primates, but we don't want to stop eating hamburgers. So, and we and we know that loss of forest to agriculture is much more damage than these 400 primates every 2-3 years. So, Sophia, it's hard. Let's work together and find a solution.
Any other comments, questions? No? Okay.
Sorry. So I grew up in Central America. I'm very, I know the Capuchin monkeys, we call them mono cara blanca, like a white face monkey. But I remember they like they would travel, like they would just be in big groups most of the time, like a big family. Have you ever noticed like incorporating some into like the wild and being affected by the community that they end up being integrated into, like their entire like personality, or they get shunned or anything like that?
You're talking about reintroducing primates in areas where there are already.
Yeah.
Yeah, we try to do that in areas that are few individuals. So it's important from them also to increase the group size and to increase genetic diversity. We don't release them in area where there are already a large population. Okay, if there is already a large population, we don't want to put them there. We are just going to cause competition. So every time we go there to mapping, we ask the local if they know if there are primates there, and then we try to ask, oh, how many are them? And we try to actively search. So we try to release them in areas that are few primates, in the hope that it will increase the group size. And there was one release we did, and one of the animals was I don't know, integrated, just following the native group in the next day of release. So in the next, we are radio collars, and we listened, and then when we found it, it was already in the periphery of the group. And Capuchin monkeys, again, does not say, it's harder to introduce marmosets than Capuchins. Marmosets are much more aggressive than Capuchins. Capuchin monkeys are known for their tolerant society. They are known for that. It's easier to release them back. They are accepted much easier than, for example, marmosets. Marmosets, although smaller, they're much more aggressive. They do not accept newcomers easier. So everything has to be tailored to the species.
Hi, thanks so much for this. I have so many questions, but I'll just pick one. Following up from this question, if you have an area that has few primates already, before releasing more primates into that area, are you looking at why there might be fewer primates there to begin with?
Yes, normally it's lack of habitat itself, they just lost, or previous hunting. So we try to track that to see why there is no longer animals there. Most of the areas we released, there are no monkeys at all. They were just disappeared from the area. They just disappeared because if you have a small group size, you can just lose by bottleneck of genetic effects or even predation. You know, the individuals do not survive by themselves there. So we try to release in areas where there are none there, but are still suitable for them. But one of the most important parts is the work with the local population to figure out if they are still hunting, if what happened disappear, if the source disappear. But one of the bottlenecks is really to find the release areas, to find them. What we are finding a lot of support is the owners of the farms as a compensation and tax discounts, they accept receiving animals. That's the case we are having now. They are owner of the farmer in order of compensation, in order to be legally accepted, so they accept the animals and they themselves protect the area. Okay, so another challenge.
Thank you.
One more.
So I remember you had discussed one of the potential discussion questions was the basically the killing of the monkeys instead of the conservation. Now I know that in Quebec we've done similar things, and I think we might still be in the South Shore with deer populations. So my wonder is, why would that be, like, besides the monetary factor, why would that be preferred over your version of conservation?
All of the epidemiological, genetical Armageddon that we may cause.
Okay.
No, they say it's too risky. is to rescue. It's not sure that they will really fulfill the ecological functions. It's not really, it's a lot of money. So just is a, although I myself find it hard because while I accept that for few cases, it cannot be the rule. You cannot just say, okay, let's kill 500,000 animals. I don't know, there must be a solution. So what we are proposing are experimental release areas. So we have these large areas, 200 kilometers wide, that we try to monitor. Okay, so in this area we are trying to do, and there are all restoration, areas in restoration. Let's try to monitor. It's easier for capuchins, harder for birds. If you release birds, how you ensure the birds not flying out these 200 areas, okay? But we try to keep these monitored areas to see if it works. Now, as an alternative to increase the killing and the loss of biodiversity. But some colleagues, they say that these rescued animals, they're dead already. They're dead already. So just finish the job.
All right.
It's a discussion.
It's an interesting thought process.
Yeah.
To say the least. Thank you.
Any final words, Marks?
Thank you, thank you.
Just really like to thank Renata for coming all the way from Brazil and presenting and your wonderful presentation. Thank you so, so much. And also to say again that Renata will be doing 2 further workshops in the Department of Geography, Planning and Environment next Tuesday afternoon from 3 to 5 and the following Tuesday from 3 to 5. So you can follow up and learn more about capuchins and also some statistical quantitative techniques if you want to sign up for those workshops. Thank you so much, Renata, and thank you, Fourth Space, for having us.
Of course, thank you. All right, folks, we're going to close up the Zoom now, and we invite you back at 1 p.m. for the next event. Thanks so much for being in that space and for your comments and questions. We appreciate you. Bye, everybody.